Welcome to the Goldmine Business Podcast, where we help you transform, scale, and thrive by unlocking the power of your mindset, faith, and business strategy. I'm your host, Bennett Santana, and today we're going to be talking about something so crucial that's going to determine whether you succeed or stay stuck. You know, what if I told you that 80% of business success has nothing to do with strategy, but everything to do with your mindset? The same thinking that got you here will not take you to your next level. In fact, Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So I want to say this to you. The mind that got you to this spot, the problems that you're in right now, the level that you're in right now, the mindset that you have is what got you this spot. And so what you have to do is change that mindset. So let that sink in. You cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. The real key for transformation is not your strategy, your resources, your skill, your network. It's basically how you think. We're going to do a quick DISC-based assessment to try to help identify what are some of your biggest mindset shortcomings or dominant mindsets that you may have. And by the end of this episode, you should have some tools that you need to shift your thinking and start moving you forward towards success. Let me ask you, why does mindset matter more than strategy? You got to think about that. Where did that come from? In fact, what I did was I found a survey of 300 business leaders and 1,000 employees and found that 88% of the executives agreed in that survey that growth mindset is the most critical factor for an employee that really dictates the success. 89% of senior leaderships believe future business success was dependent on the leaders with the growth mindset. So growth mindset is one of the number one things, that among executives and senior leaders that they say is necessary for success in a company. This means that success is not about how of the business. It's about the who. Your thoughts shape your reality. I've spoken that, as a man thinks, so is he. So if you think small, you're going to act small and you're going to stay small. But if you think abundantly and you act boldly, you'll expand your opportunities. Every breakthrough starts in your mind before it happens in your life. And this is the start to taking a setback and making it a comeback. And that's my life story. Just share with you. I lost everything in the 2008 downturn. I had to cash out my 401k. I had to basically either sell my properties or go into foreclosure, with a number of them did. Lost a lot of friends, and obviously, imagine how that impacts your self-esteem. And so I had to change my mindset at that time. It was a mindset change that had to occur. And it's not a quick process that's going to get you out of the problem right immediately. But one of the mindset changes that I had was I learned this mantra. It says, intention plus mechanism equals results. Intention plus mechanism equals results. And I learned and I believed that if I had the intention and I turned on the mechanism, the intention is really the desire, what I wanted to do, what the results were. The mechanism is how to do that. And I found out there was 1,000 ways to get the mechanisms in place. And then that equals the results. And that was how I was able to save my house. That is how I was able to save my company. That is how I was able to return from basically near collapse. And it was because I changed the mindset at that time. And that's why I think it's so important for me to share this with you, especially making any setbacks in your life be a comeback moment. And that's where you got to remember, people listen to a testimony. And guess what is, the part of testimony? First there's test and then the money comes. Come on now. I'll tell you, that's how I want to be. Let there be the test and let the money come. And that's what's happening in my life. What I want to examine with you are mindsets, general mindsets that trap and keep you stuck. And these are basically mindsets that I've encountered in people. And so I just want to share some of those mindsets with you to kind of give you an idea where we're going with this. So for one, there's a scarcity mentality, a scarcity mindset, meaning there's not ever enough. And this is how, a lot of folks will have that mentality. So they can't invest in business because they might lose the money. If someone else wins, that means I lose. Those are things, that's a scarcity mindset. My dad, he grew up in the Depression area. Before I started, I had a 401k. I used to use that 401k to start the business. And he was saying, hey, I made the greatest mistake out there. Because he had a scarcity mentality. Unfortunately, that's as far as he could, he did as best as he can. He did very well in his life. And he's 93 years old and, living in retirement. And so, but there was always a scarcity mentality wrapped up. And it was because of, the type of environment that he grew up in. And so we have to have a shift there. I know folks that their mindsets is geared towards scarcity. And if you look at one thing, there are forecasts that the world rises up and provides us with supply. I remember in college, it was estimated by 2030 we would run out of all petroleum oil. And guess what? We haven't run out of it. And let me ask you a question. Why has commodity prices, think about copper, all those, metals that are necessary for the building of these cars, why haven't we run out of them? In fact, what has happened since the last 30 years is commodity prices have actually, outside of petroleum, let's take gold out, has actually gone down 30%. Well, how does that mean? We're actually using it more. It's because the environment just rises up. The world just rises up to meet our needs. And so you got to shift from a scarcity mentality, because if you do have a scarcity mentality, that's what's going to bring into your life. Job, what feared him came upon him. And that's the one thing. If you really think you're going to live in lack, you're going to end up in lack. But you have to switch that to abundant mentality. Look at nature. Nature rises up to meet the demands of whatever people need. If not, check out the commodity prices. Do a research. Why is it that we haven't run out of copper, lithium? They just found so many metric tons here in the United States. Gold, they just found 80 million metric tons in China. Got enough gold to handle every computer, every need that's out there. And so another mentality is basically a fixed mentality. I can't change. I notice, folks, that it's very hard for them to change. It's very hard for them to pick up a new software package. And that mindset really is a mindset that they don't want to look at things different. And that has to shift. That has to shift. The other mindset is a fear-based mindset. You probably encountered this, is what if I fail? My own personality being kind of a dominant driver type on the DISC theory. Basically, that's one of the weaknesses of that, is that there is always that discussion of fear. There's always that fear that's there. And a lot of times people won't start a business because they might fail. There are those that would rather play it safe than take a risk, because they'll walk through all these scenarios and it's like, oh, what would happen if this, what would happen like if I unplug that, what would happen, and they won't ever try it. They won't ever try it. And so that's a fear-based mentality. The other thing is a victim mentality. Life happens to me. Nothing ever works out for me. It's not my fault, and I just have bad luck. I did a little short that talked about folks that live above the line and below the line. And the ones that live below the line basically blame, makes excuses, and they deny. And that spells bed. And I told them in that short that those are people that should just stay in bed. The ones that are living above the lines, they have their goals written out. They're going places, they're going forward, and they're learning and so forth. And so you have to take a responsibility if you want to make a shift. You have to take a responsibility to kind of move out of that mindset. How can I give you a tool? I wanted to make sure when I was thinking through this, how I could give you a tool that could help you kind of identify the mindsets. Now, in the future podcasts, I'm going to be going through just you writing out some of your obviously mindship limitations, or you call them limiting beliefs. But I found out that there are certain basic mindsets that are associated with our behavior. And so I wanted to kind of put a couple concepts together to see if it would share some light in terms of who you are and what some of the mindsets that you may have to deal with. I've done DISC assessments. We are a reseller of the TTI International DISC Assessment. Now, it's a very interesting story as to where that theory came from, the original DISC theory. It came from Dr. William Marston. And he was born in 1889. He was a psychologist, and he wrote a number of books, and the books were the basis for the theory. And so he was also an inventor. He invented the lie detector by actually moving the blood pressure device at a higher level. And so the blood pressure device that we use like at home to take our blood pressure, it's actually has a basis in Marston's work. And then that work led to his development of the lie detector. And so he's very also unique because he also invented a female superhero that many of us know is Wonder Woman. He invented her and he put the belt of truth around her waist. So this man is very interesting. And he came up with this theory, it's called the DISC assessment, that puts people in basic 4 quadrants. And I'll share them with you. It's very simple. It's either aggressive, non-aggressive, it's people orientation, task orientation. And so if you're aggressive and task oriented, then you're the driver. So aggressive and task, so you want to get things done. So if you're aggressive and people-oriented, you're basically the influence side, the I. which is let's say the evangelist, the person who goes out and sells and talks. Now, if you're low aggressive, and you're basic people oriented, then you're the S. You're the amiable types, the team builder types, the people who deal with other people's feeling types. And then if you're low aggressive and task oriented, then you're the C, which is the cognitive, the one that handles the detail, that is able to handle the detail. And guess what? All of us have two of those traits in us. And I've done assessments throughout my last 30 years, done about 4 of them. And I've studied this assessment and to see, what behaviors do I have, and it didn't really change much. I will tell you that. I went from a driver and influence when I was younger. Obviously, I was very high social, those kind of things. And then when I started a business, I became more cognitive. I became a D and a C. And so we all share those traits. And so I have a very simple way to help you, to kind of determine which one you are. And so there's one question. So how do you handle challenges? If you take charge quickly, then you're a driver. If you rally people and persuade, you are the I. You're the influence. If you seek harmony and avoid conflict, you're the S. And if you analyze everything before acting, you're the C. So, I would say A, B, or C. You just circle which one you think it is. The other thing is, how do you handle change? If you see change as an opportunity to win, you're a driver. If you embrace change as fun and exciting, you are the influence, right? Or let's say the evangelist, the I. If you prefer stability but can adjust, that's an S. And if you need time to analyze something before it happens, then you're C. And so that just gives you a quick way to decide, quickly. Now, obviously, the most thorough way is through a DISC assessment, and we're in the process of putting a funnel together related to the DISC, and we'll be offering you guys a discount for it. But it's a 52 report that is well studied by the top company in the United States that does this assessment. Something else I want to share with you so that was more like a verbal exercise, but I have a visual way to helping you decide whether you're a D, A, I, or S, or C. So there are these following shapes. I would ask you, the following shapes, which one would you like the most? A pyramid, a cube, a ball, a wavy line? Let me ask that again. Which one do you like the most? A pyramid, a ball, wavy lines, or a cube? I kind of switched it there, but you get the idea. So if you like the pyramid, then you're a driver. If you like the wavy lines, you're the influence, the I. If you like the ball, you're the S. And you like the cube, you're the teacher. And so that's a quick way to just determine, where you're at. Because once we decide where you're at, then I could help share with you, some of the weaknesses that those traits will have. And there's a number of weaknesses at a high level. The driver tends to move to distrust. The influence is worried about his self-esteem. The S doesn't want to change. And the C has analysis paralysis issues. And these are limiting beliefs that you have to be aware of, basically of your own behavior type. And then the question is, how do these behavior types happen? And for the most part, it starts out where you were born in your family. So if you're the first person born in your family, then guess what they tell you? Hey, take care of the others. So you end up becoming the driver. Turns out that the baby, turns out to be the driver too, because he gets everything he wants. And so the ones in the middle, they turn out to be more, let's say older brothers, and in the middle, and then, baby, and you're somewhere in the middle. So you'll use your verbal skills to get advantage. Hey, Mom, you look so pretty. Can I have an ice cream? Or you might use your abilities to, hey, how are you feeling today? I hope, see what I'm saying? You use those verbal skills to feel feelings, and that's the basic S. And for the most part, that's my story. I'm sticking to it, just to let you know. I wanted to share with you because it's very interesting that I found. I gave you a visual context of the DISC, but I found that the DISC relates to the offices in the Bible. And I'm like, you're probably saying, how's that happen? So if you go to Ephesians 4:11, it was he who gave some to be apostles, right? Some to be prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to prepare God's people for the works of the service so that the body may be built up. And you know what? No matter what, whether you're in a church body or you're working in your own business, these are these are basic divisions and behaviors that God, identified. And so if you, just take a look at your hand. The four fingers is the disc, D-I-S-C. So your first, really the index finger is basically points the way. You can see, pointing the way, giving the direction. So that in the Bible, that's the prophet, right? And so the I speaks over all the others. That's the evangelist. So it basically, there's the prophet, the evangelist, the pastor, and the teacher. And so, and if you look at how these work, it's like the proclaiming and the pointing out. You can see how that divides up the hand, that voice. But the message is from the evangelist and the pastor. The teacher is the C. It's the mini-me, has the smallest but has the heaviest job. And so, but what about the apostle? Well, the apostle touches all of them. And the apostle basically is overseeing. Any one of these could be, higher levels. Apostles basically made disciples. And so this is something that I wanted to share with you because it's super, super important, So that kind of demonstrates there's a prophet, the evangelist, the pastor, and the teacher. And so it falls in line with the disc. That's so interesting. But it's also awesome that we could use these things that we learn, right? That kind of gives you a kind of little overview. And so our mindset shapes, in a sense, or maybe the other way around, your behavior really, your God-given role, because this was your behavior really is God-given. Whether you're a driver, influence, a high S or a C, that is given to you by God. That is given to you by God for a reason. So I was, I'm a driver. That was given to me by God. I know folks that are around me was given to me by God. And so, and those are skills that God gave you that you could apply in the marketplace. You could apply that in the church. You could apply it anywhere, just as long as you start to learn about it. But you also have to realize that along with those mindsets, are very positive mindsets, and our DISC assessment will actually help you, show you what value you have related to those, that behavior, and also will show you some weaknesses. And that's the most important part about growth, that if we could learn about our weaknesses. So, the prophet, obviously some of the cases that you see where there was the prophet Elijah was running from Queen Jezebel and had to overcome fear. The evangelist needs to overcome self-doubt. The pastor needs to embrace change, and the teacher needs to take action, not overthink things. So which mindset shift do you need to make today? Let me ask you that. What do you need to make a shift in? So think about those things that I talked about. There's scarcity. You got to make a shift to abundant thinking, and where there's opportunities all around us. A lot of times you would walk through a neighborhood and you kind of see what this neighborhood is so poor and there's so much blight here, and yet each houses are worth $100,000. You do 100 houses, that you're way up in the million range in terms of value, and you think it's scarcity, but it's not. Then there's the fixed and growth mindset, and so you have to be able to move toward I can't to what I can. I can learn to improve. And then the other one is you have to move from survival, I'm in the survival mode, versus success thinking. Success thinking creates long-term impact. I'm going to basically help you right now through a framework that I created that could help you just as a way for you to think about this mindset shift. Think about the word change. Change embraces transformation. In the Bible, it talks about do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing your mind. That's in Romans 12. But that word transformed is really two words. It is, and it's very simple. It's metamorphosis. Metamorphoso, I guess it's in the Greek. And meta is change, and morphoso is to change, your form, your structure, your, whatever. It's a pretty encompassing word. If you think about a caterpillar, takes these stages, and let's just say there's that caterpillar stage, then there's that where that cocoons, which practically dies, and then metamorphosizes into a beautiful butterfly. And I think a lot of times, for us, when we go through trials and tribulations, that's our death period. And I tell people that are going to situations that have to deal with very difficult people, I basically tell them, guess what? Remember, you can't hurt a dead man. If you're dead, no one could hurt you. Cherish those moments where you go through trials and tribulation. Cherish those moments where you just close your mouth and just die. If we did die to ourselves, we would have metamorphosized into something much more, elegant and beautiful and free. The other day, my wife, I woke up and she goes, "What are you doing today?" And it was a bad day. I knew I had some reports that I had to do. I wasn't looking forward to it. It was more in the cognitive realm, and sometimes I kind of go into procrastination on that, but that day I had to deal with it. And so, you know what I said to her? I said, "Honey, I'm getting up. I'm grabbing my surfboard. I'm going to hit the waves. Going to hit that beautiful ocean. I'm going to watch for those sharks, avoid the sharks. I'm going to make sure that I don't get scratched up on the coral reef, and I'm going to have me a great day." And you know what I say? "Honey, what are you doing today?" She goes, "You know what? I'm going to jump on your back." And I'm like, that's how it has to be. That's how it has to be. That's the kind of mentality we got to, have when we're going to face those challenges in the day. Getting back to the renewing thought, and an easy way to remember it, just remember change. Change is a framework to help you shift your mindset and unlock the next level of success in your business, faith, and personal life. So let's break it down step by step. So why does it matter? Really, your old way of thinking will not create new results. That's what we talked about. Remember the quote from Einstein? It's like whatever your thought process got to the level where you're at. And many people stay stuck because they're just caught in the same thoughts and the same fears and same excuses. And if you don't change and challenge your thinking, you got to challenge it. That's what I got to say. The C is for challenge. You got to challenge your thinking so you could just move from where you're at. So remember the word change. The C is for challenge your thinking. How do you challenge your thinking? You have to identify your limiting beliefs and what thoughts keep playing that small. It's a conversation that comes in your head. Those limiting beliefs. I used to think to myself, I grew up in Gary, Indiana. I didn't really learn how to read and write. I didn't know how to speak English, how to speak Spanish. And I said, hey, because I'm Hispanic, I'll never be successful. And one of the things, when I identified or grabbed that limiting belief and I twisted it around, and there's a process to twist it around and make it an opposite, I said, because I'm Hispanic, my vocabulary is twice as much as the average person. That was one of the limiting beliefs I had to flip around. And once I flipped around, I'm like, I got superpower. There were superpowers right behind that thought. And so ask yourself, does this thought serve me? Does it help me grow, or is it keeping me stuck? And you have to replace those negative thoughts with the actual opposite. And a lot of times you have a faith-driven affirmation. That's what we need to switch that around. For the C is for to challenge yourself. The H is for having hope in trials. And I will tell you this, you have to thank God for the trials and tribulations, because those are the times when you're going to learn the most. And as James says, it's consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And there's a benefit of going through the tough times. There's a benefit of me growing up where I grew up and getting beat up and getting almost killed. Guess what I got? Street cred, There's a benefit of it. Why does this matter? Because setbacks are not stop signs. They're stepping stones. And I used to walk through the forest preserve when I was losing everything. I would take a walk in the forest preserve, and at the end of the first forest preserve, there was a stop sign. And you know what I would do? I would go to it, and I would say to myself, I would basically look at it, there'd be no more stops, and I'd cover the S. I'm going to the top. And this is what you have to do. No more stops. You're going to the top. Put that hand over that S on the stop, because you're going to the top. The most successful people are not the ones who never fail, but those who refuse to quit when things go wrong. The Bible says a righteous man falls 7 times and gets himself up. And so you have to get yourself up. You have to turn your setbacks to a comeback. You have to do that. If you don't do this, there's people watching you. And if you take those challenges on and you turn it around, and guess what? That becomes a testimony. That's what they're looking for. They want to root for you. They want a turnaround story. Every movie is about, the going through the trials, and then there's redemption. That's what sells movies. And your life will sell. I will tell you. It will sell. When facing a challenge, you got to ask yourself, what is this trial teaching me? That's one thing you got to ask yourself. What is this teaching me? It's kind of hard to ask that question a lot of times. What is this trial teaching me? But that's one thing you got to ask. What is this trial teaching me? So shift your perspective. See the obstacle as an opportunity to build resilience, and keep gratitude journal. Basically, have gratitude for what you're going through, these trials and tribulations. We write them down, journal them. I journaled them, and a lot of times I would go through right now, and I'd go through my old journal and look at these references when I was actually, in foreclosure, go and see the judge and dealing with those emotions. I wrote those down. Those are great to have, because later that'll be used to really give you perspective in your life and how well it's going to be. When you embrace those trials, that makes you just stronger. The A in challenge is to accept diverse perspectives. Yes, we got diversity here. We definitely have diversity, and you have to have diversity in the folks. Proverbs says, where there's no guidance, the people fail, but in the abundance of counselors, there is victory. If you only listen to people who think exactly like you, you'll never grow. As I tell people, hey, if you so happen to be in the room and you're the smartest person, you know what? That's a big problem. You should never be in the room where you're the smartest person in the room. Success comes from seeking wisdom from different perspectives. How do I apply it? How do I apply this accepting diverse perspectives, accepting diversity in the perspectives that you get? And seek mentors who already walked the path that you're on. You need mentors that have gone through the situation that you've gone through. They may empathize with you, but they won't know what you're going to go through. You need to find people who've already gone through it. You need to read books, right, to stretch your thinking. You got to bring these books in, or watching YouTube videos, listening actively, and being humble enough to admit when you're wrong and learn from others. And that's the key thing for growing, is being humble enough to admit you're wrong. And a lot of times we put ourselves way up there. We think we're the experts, and it's hard for us to come down. And the situation is, you do have to learn how to basically come down and humble ourselves, right? I always say, I have a little saying. I always say this: I might be wrong, I often am. I might be wrong, I often am. And I'll share that with someone when I just present an opinion. I might be wrong, I often am. And basically, look, I just let you know, I might be wrong. So be humble enough to admit that you're wrong and learn from others. That's the one key of the A. The N, challenge, is nurture mindfulness. There's a verse that says, be anxious for nothing, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God transcends all understanding will guard your heart and mind, Christ Jesus. Your mind is the most valuable asset. If you don't guard it, stress, fear, and negativity will overcome it. And you have to guard your mind. If you have to get away, if you have to go out to the country and just kind of relax, if you're really stressed out, guard that mind, guard that thought process. And be careful what you say. That's the one thing. Be careful what you utter. If you start to utter that things are going to go wrong, if you're going to start to utter the negative, that just sets that out there. You got to be declaring the positive. So that's why one thing I do is I start my day with prayer and gratitude. Prayer, gratitude, praising God, time, with God. That's how I start my day, to kind of guard my mind. And a lot of times I find that, some scripture that I learned, I'd actually apply it that day, and I'm able to think through it. It may not apply every day, but it actually, I think, has a cumulative effect. And as long as you're thinking about those things, you got less time to be kind of, negative and so forth. Limit distractions. Avoid toxic social media. You know what I do is, will tell you, I'm addicted to social media. I hate those shorts are like short. I could watch them, right? And so what I do is like, well, you know what? My short time is Friday and Saturday. So I'll watch the shorts, but on Sunday through Thursday, I delete those off my computer. not my computer, my PC. That's my phone. That's where that's where you get the chance to watch it, so easily on your phone. So I delete all that, the TikTok, and I should be watching it, but I'll delete it. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that, gone. Even YouTube, gone. If I have to get on it, get on my PC. And so try to limit the distractions and nurture that mindset. And obviously, some things that help me: deep breathing, reflection, especially when you're feeling stressed. To have those techniques that you can learn to take control of your thoughts and take control of your emotions. The G in challenge is to grow in wisdom. And it says, let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtains guidance. And the key thing is learning. You have to learn. If you want to break old patterns, you can't just break old patterns by the old thoughts. Remember, your thoughts is what got you to the place where you're at. And so you could either repeat the old patterns or you can level up to learning. That's my thought. Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge correctly. So if you don't have the knowledge, how could you apply it? Right? How can you get the wisdom unless you apply the knowledge? And a lot of folks don't even have knowledge. And there's no excuses. I'll tell you, YouTube is so wonderful. If I had YouTube when I was a kid, I'd learn how to paint on cars, those flaming stripes that I always wanted to paint on cars. Imagine a Camaro with flames. I would have been able to do that now if I had YouTube. And I had plenty of time. Maybe learn how to play. I did play guitar, but I'd stopped. But imagine if I only had YouTube, what I could have gone and done. And so, no excuses now. So how do you apply this? You got to be a lifelong learner. Never stop reading or studying and improving. And seek wise counsel and make decisions based on wisdom, not emotion. And that's, and the key thing is fear God. That's the ultimate thing. It's a hard concept to understand, but it's so easy to do. It's basically, fear God is really to respect God, honor God, declare that He's Lord of your life, like I did, and put Him first. And so true wisdom comes from aligning your decisions with biblical principles. And so, every day I'm learning, growing, and evolving. And that's the mindset that we have to have. And so, and the E of challenge is basically amplify, exemplify. It's really the word is exemplify, be an example of leadership. And then basically let your light shine to others. That they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And so, why does this matter? Leadership is not about title, it's about influence. The way you live, act, and serve others determine your impact, and true leadership is about being a light in your industry. And so, be an example. You got to lead with integrity. You got to take ownership. You have to serve selflessness. And so, selflessly, leadership is about giving more than what you take. And you got to lead by example, and that'll make a lasting impact. Lead by example. And so, the final challenge, which challenge step do you need the most, is my question, of the ones that I talked about. Which of these change steps do you need the most? Let me just kind of go over those again, just to make sure, review it. So the C is challenge. It's challenge your thinking. Right? Challenge your thinking. It's hope in trials. Accept diverse perspectives. Nurture mindfulness. Grow in wisdom. And exemplify leadership. And so that basically I wanted to cover with you uncover the mindset traps that may hold you back and how to break free. And so I hope this session was valuable to you. And the question I want to ask you is just for you to think, what's stopping you from shifting your mindset today? And that's one thing that as I go, we all face challenges. We're all facing either financial challenges or family challenges, health. And it's basically, I know for myself, I got to keep that mindset going. We've opened up the Gold Mine business community. It's a waiting list because we're building a community. You can go to it at BennettSantana.com. That's with 2 T's, 2 N's. BennettSantana.com and sign up for the waiting list. And above all, please hit the subscribe. Please share it with your friends. So it's been a pleasure to do this podcast where we'll help you transform, scale, and thrive. Until the next time, I just wanted to say to you, basically, never give up and always build up. Thank you so much.